What are you about exactly? Just give our viewers just a chance to understand what this organization is.
So, I mean, in a nutshell, I think it boils down to creating opportunities for youth on the autism spectrum. That's the essence of what we do. We started at this as a summer camp, and at this point now, we're creating opportunities in social opportunities, creative opportunities, employment opportunities. So we're really just trying to everybody that approaches our organization that's interested in becoming a part, we want to be able to offer them something and help them further themselves in their lives.
Okay, but you have a very specific set of offerings right now. What does that look like? Sort of, what are these opportunities?
Okay, well, I mean, the core of what we want to do is create social entrepreneurship opportunities, and so part of that is in an employment sense, and part of that is for just regular learning, so people can take that and apply that to other parts of their life. And then there's also the realm of social opportunities, so Friday Night Social Club, we do some school outreach, we also have a youth social club, so we've expanded that to some younger students, and then we've got our summer camps coming up too. So that's where we shut everything down and offer creative opportunities and hire youth on the spectrum again as well to be able to support new people coming in. And what am I missing?
Well, the internship program or stage program
Going back to that, yeah.
is kind of it's what sort of throughout the year is what Spectrum is all about. We offer like individual one-on-one programs throughout the week. We do the social programs like Dan mentioned, the social clubs on Friday night, the youth social club on Sundays, an animation club. But the core of the Monday to Friday from September until June is our internship program, which is sort of happening behind us. So in that program, we're really looking to pick the talented individuals that we've worked with in a social and creative realm and give them the opportunity to further their skills and take a hack at working on corporate contracts or creating their own projects that we see as valuable for the world to consume as media. So like for instance, we have gentleman Peter Papianu, who you guys just saw finishing up a cooking recipe or a cooking show, and it's called Sweets with Pete. It's fantastic. I mean, they're short little episodes, but in that process, he's learned to, I mean, he's just almost independently making a cooking show once a week, and that's awesome. So we want to continue to support him with that. But where we sort of step in as an organization is, so we have Sweets with Pete, which is Peter's project, and we've sort of taken Pete's skills in the kitchen and his charm in front of the camera and just confidence in front of the camera, and we've started shooting something called Eats with Pete, which is where Peter goes into a restaurant and he works with, we've shot 3 so far. And so he goes into the restaurant and he works with a chef in Montreal. And so we're going to, I mean, we haven't finished all the episodes yet, but we're going to start marketing that as something that could be sort of a step further. So by allowing people the space to explore and giving them the tools to explore their ideas, we're seeing these incredible ideas come out from individuals that might not have made it in that world, so to speak. So Spectrum Productions is about creating opportunities for youth and young adults in media production. So we've created this social enterprise, which is a media production company that is providing social and creative opportunities to youth on the autism spectrum, but more importantly, it's giving employment opportunities to youth on the autism spectrum. So we're sort of, we're tapping into sort of an unseen potential in these youth and taking that potential and hopefully marketing that to the world and creating this new innovative production company that is employing youth on the autism spectrum. So we were talking about social entrepreneurship, and basically like we're wanting to engage these youth in many different facets. We could just look at this as an opportunity to teach people how to use cameras and teach people how to edit, but I think what's really interesting about this project is that we're seeing those talents and we're also seeing these amazing ideas that are coming from the youth we support, and giving them that opportunity as well is really important in making this a true social enterprise. Otherwise it's just kind of exploitive, I guess. We worked at a school together. We were working with youth on the autism spectrum. Both of us had an interest in media, just as a hobby, basically.
Yeah, doing side projects, and we were using it within the school system too, and starting to talk about how we could apply media and technology to being a learning tool and a creation tool, and partly being a bit frustrated by the bounds of the school system and wanting to start a new open creative enterprise or opportunity. I think the core idea behind this was to actually make it a for-profit, self-sustaining.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to be when we first started out, we were looking for that person who could tell us exactly how to become a social enterprise. And at that time, we didn't know what a social enterprise was. We just had this rough idea of running a company in a way that gave back to the community that it was employing. And so that was kind of the rough idea when we started. And the reason we got into it was strictly we ran a summer camp and we had talented youth that were there. And they were 18, 19 years old, leaving the school system, and there was nothing for them. Like the options outside of what we're doing would be, maybe not quite ready to get into the cégep system or get into the university system. And a lot of the for-profit education options out there in terms of like video and media productions are prohibitively expensive and maybe not the best option for someone like that.
And typically the pathway too is often like, okay, you can get some experience doing a task at Scores or at Tim Hortons, and there's a lot of opportunities within that too, but it doesn't really recognize the creative talents that these guys are putting forth and that we saw within those summer camps and at school, and also an aptitude for technology in a creative sense too, and that's something that isn't really, there's not pathways out there for that, and that's kind of where this idea started from. That was the whole beginning of that, even though we didn't really know how an organization would work or how that...
Or what an organization was.
Not really. We had general ideas about it, and like, that sounds great. And we went to a lot of different meetings and went to the SADC and like, how does all this work? And we reached out to people and said like, hey, this is what we want to have happen. Like, what should we do? Which route do we go? And people were kind of like, well,
you could do this, or you could do that, or you could do that.
So I want to ask a quick question.
Yeah.
Henry talks about seeing, doing, thinking, instead of thinking, seeing, doing.
Okay.
So the idea of having some type of vision on an intuitive level, you knew that they had creative capacity and you wanted to try this summer camp, and then you did it, but you didn't really know how it was going to go. I don't think you had a grand vision to take you to where you are today at all, but you kind of learned your way along. Could you take us on a bit of a learning journey, like all the sort of different ways you pivoted or things that went really differently than you expected?
Yeah, absolutely. So the onset of what is now Spectrum Productions, we ran a camp together. Dan and I were having a couple of beers together at the completion of this camp, which was, exhausting. We worked tirelessly for a few weeks on this project. And
learning to work together in a new space. We were learning to edit video in a way that we hadn't done it before. We were reaching out to our community, our local community, and people were dropping by and helping us out. And it was exhausting. It was almost like pure exhaustion led us to the choice to start this organization.
Yeah, and so we talked about it. And just said we should try and do this year-round. And that's where the crazy kind of part comes in, is like we actually just did it without any plan. I mean, the plan was, essentially like a napkin plan of like, we want to do this, 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 and this. And then, so we were working in the school system, so weren't working in the summertime. We came back, I think we called each other on
we went for a vacation. It was like 2 weeks before we were about to go back to work or decide to start, and we're just like, let's do it.
So Dan quit his job. I went down to 2 days a week. We got a studio immediately, which at the time maybe was a bit of a crazy idea, but I think it was one of the things that like really solidified us, like having a space and focusing on that space.
We needed a space to work and to set up and start thinking about the physical environment of where people were going to come. And it's in the same building. We've since moved to a slightly different space. But that was, it was a core piece of what made it happen, because we had to start programming to be able to pay for that space too.
And so that first incarnation was actually called Camera Roll Productions. And I mean, in a lot of ways, it's quite similar to what we're doing now. A lot of the programs are the same. Things have grown substantially. I'm just trying to think back to those days and like.
Well, one thing that's really, really, like, I remember is when we made that little sort of napkin plan. It was kind of like, here's our basic idea. How would that programming work? And we kind of made like a little mini budget. Like, okay, if we actually got this to work, it could work if we did a few different programs. I mean, since then, we had the internship program. We had individual programming. So those were like the two core pieces, and then summer camp that ran in the summer. And that happened, I mean, we've since surpassed that, and it was kind of neat to see, like, I mean, maybe like 2 years ago, all that kind of came to fruition, where we'd made an initial plan on the back porch, and then that kind of happened. And now we're in this place of, where do we scale it from now?
That's the question, because you learned your way to a prototype, and now you're on a scaling trajectory. So what are you thinking about in terms of scaling?
I mean, we had some really incredible opportunities over the past 6 months. So we've been talking to some people from across Canada. So I mean, there's kind of two different ways we could scale at this point. We could take the project and, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, make it as tight as possible so that we could hand it over to other people to do it.
So that it could be replicated in small little pockets.
But there's also this opportunity to scale the employment aspect of what we're doing. We have talented people working here, and just getting the word out about what we're capable of as an organization is another real potential as well. And I think that's something that would be terribly exciting for us, not terribly, wonderfully exciting for us, because then we'd be reaching that point of like a truly self-sustaining organization, and that's what the original plan was. I mean, even at the very get-go, that's what we wanted to do. So even though we didn't know what it was, our intuition, I guess, was good about what it was we wanted to do. it's
why we decided to go for profit, because we didn't want to be reliant on grants or something that could fall through and then have programming fall through. Whereas, I mean, now I still think that this like wide platform of making sure we provide services to everybody on the spectrum, no matter what their interests, creative, or if they're not interested in employment, we still have programming that they're going to be able to come and engage and be a part of our community.
And that's, I mean, one of the big lessons we've learned is, we tried as a for-profit for 2-3 years, and we struggled. It was really, really difficult. Like when we first started out, like the first 3 months, we had to throw parties in our space to pay rent, we did everything we could just to get by at the onset, which included working like 100-hour weeks and not really getting paid for quite a long time. And we basically reached a point where it was
unsustainable. We just couldn't swing it any longer. And so that kind of became the point where we decided to get a board and reach out and look for people who were active and try and, I mean, we were 2 people, and having a board meant that we had for sure 9 other people, or I guess the 7 other people, to help us expand and scale and have ideas too. I think that's a big piece of, I mean, that's how we met you as well.
So my understanding of you guys is this is a pure passion project. Do you feel that as you are organizing and scaling whatever direction it takes and professionalizing, that there's a trade-off, or are you still able to savor the passion project aspect in a new structure?
I don't feel like I'm losing any of the passion for the project. We're definitely wearing different hats in what we're doing. Like, we're becoming managers, we're becoming people that run a nonprofit. What do we call it? Co-executive directors or something like that?
Yeah. Trying to figure out what that means, though, from an idea on a porch to actually running an organization that's got multiple programs, and we're scaling up to become a nonprofit and starting to look for grants and reaching out to our board and different members of the community. But I think it's been an enriching thing, and It also, something that's core for us too, is that it's going to grow larger than us and continue on when we're, for many years to come. And it's spreading the idea too, which I don't think would have happened to quite the same scale as it has already, and we hope it continues to.
So I want to ask about co-creating.
Yeah.
You are two co-founders that co-created this together, and then you continue to co-create with all of the participants in the organization, all the members, right?
Yeah, that's a really key piece. We're looking to them for feedback, and that's something that we really value in the way that we organize our space and the way that we run our camps or design projects. We typically have an idea about it, and then we try it out with them, and it's instant feedback loop about what works and what doesn't. And
so what have you learned about collaboration to create teams that function well?
Well, I mean, when Dan and I first started working together, it just made sense. Like, we were on the same page, we had similar passions, we both were willing to work extraordinarily hard for a little, feedback in terms of money.
Yeah. I think a key piece of that, though, is like just having a common idea, like that common passion of like, there's a gap in the system and we see a better way of doing things instead of trying to sort of break a person down by the rules that a society or schools have. We're wanting to see people as their individual talents and what they want to explore and start to branch out from there. And that was like, I feel like that's a key piece.
The idea was there. I mean, at the start, we kind of each had sort of individual ideas, and we just said, okay, let's put these two ideas together, work on them both. They're both of our ideas now, and let's move forward. And yeah.
It's a good point, though. There's definitely a piece of that was like, okay, we've got our separate ideas, and how are we going to mesh these together? How do they connect? Yeah. But it happened really fast that we were like, well, we're both working in media. We both see this common opportunity. Yeah. If we put both ideas together, it's going to be a natural fit as far as opportunities.
But for us, I think the catalysts in terms of us working so well together were that common idea, and then as well, sort of not being happy in the work that we were doing. Not that we weren't happy, but there was something missing from that work, and I guess that was like creative freedom in our own work. Yeah. So creating our own thing like really allowed us to explore, some crazy ideas. A lot of them have worked, thank God. But on paper, like when we started this organization, I got accepted to medical school the same time. And that was a pretty tough decision. And like family, partner, everyone was kind of going, what are you doing? But it's working out.
Go to med school or start an organization where you get no pay for the first while. So yeah, that added to this is a crazy idea, but feeling there was an opportunity and it was worth pursuing too. Yeah. And I have to say too that we both just genuinely get along with each other. So I mean that's having friendship outside of commonality in working on things and towards a common goal, that helps a lot.
We didn't start as friends, which is one thing that maybe is important. Like our friend groups are now sort of intermeshed, but at the onset we had two completely independent social circles, which I think probably helped. Yeah. When you work 100 hours a week, it's nice to go to your people. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So. Yeah,
that's true. We worked together first, and then became friends after.
So what have you learned from the process? I'm now going to take it to the space of co-creating with your, what do you call them, members? Your participants?
Yeah, filmmakers.
Great filmmakers, yeah. When they give you feedback on ideas that you have, like what are you learning from that process?
I'm learning that I need to chill out a bit and have fun. It's like thinking about some sort of creation idea or hoping that there's some learning that comes out of it. Usually when I pitch an idea to someone, it's like, if you make it fun and silly, then it's a good idea. If you get too serious about it, then it just doesn't work and it falls flat. Trying to put my ideas, I think that's something that we've really tried to do, is make sure that we're looking to the participants, to the filmmakers, for input on how they want to create their own films. It's always been we're the facilitators and they're the directors, and I think that's something that we constantly have to remind ourselves of, that we're able to give ideas and facilitate and try and get conversations happening, but making sure that they've got the ability to have control over their own projects is a really key piece.
I think it's something we've like often strived to do, like just even from the very get-go in summer camps. It's pretty easy to be facilitating a video project with someone else and then leave a significant stamp of yourself on that. And we've tried really hard not to do that. And that's been a struggle in terms of like finding the right staff to work with us, because you know, people get in, like as soon as you start to invest yourself into a project, then you start to want to have control of it. Sure. So it's being like really conscious of that from the get-go, I think was really important. And then I think
within the stage program, there's a sort of a continuum of that though too, where we're trying to make sure that everyone's got their own creative control, but then as we're trying to teach work skills and add a little bit more structure to that, you have creative control, but you're also having to complete a job with instruction and feedback from the customer, and we're helping to for people to understand that, but also to take that instruction and adjust a little bit, kind of on their own terms. But it's this continuum of making sure that people have creative control, but also they can start to realize that other people have some input on their projects too.
Another, I think, really important factor in like this co-creation that we do with the individuals we work with is so time, giving people the time to express those ideas. So, you know, we'll have individuals that come in during our stage program or during summer camps, and sometimes people need 2 days to sit and stew on an idea, and I mean, like everybody does. And just recognizing that and being confident in the fact that giving people time is an okay thing, and not pushing people into like creating something right away. I think that's something like, and we struggle with it sometimes because there are deadlines and there are things that need to get done, but like time is one of the like the best tools we have in just letting things stew. And I mean, in a lot of ways it sort of relates back to this organization in that like we spent 3 years as a for-profit kind of just learning the ropes of what it is that we wanted to do. Like, I mean, we had a good idea, but we didn't really know how to execute that. And then when we became a nonprofit, we were pretty well equipped to like start making some good moves and start talking about the project in a confident and coherent way. So time is one thing. The other thing I wanted to talk about was space. So like this space has been created, and this is the second incarnation of a studio for our organization. And the first one we built with the participants. The second one we built with the participants. Like the green screen, we had guys that are part of our stage team staying late into the evening and drywalling with us. So they own this space, it's theirs. And I think that's super important. And they also set it up in a way that just works for them. There's pathways for people to walk around and think. And like people oftentimes will do tours of the studio, you know? Like we'll often like talk about like a traffic jam on the green screen because people will be just, you know, like walking around there and just getting their ideas flowing in their head.
It's a good spot to think. It's like, okay, this is where I'm going to be acting. All right, I might as well just try it out and kind of say it in my head and see how that feels.
And some of the best ideas we've seen are, it's just us listening, giving people time, and then, you know, oftentimes we'll maybe make a suggestion as to like, this would make this more marketable, or like this will make your idea more accessible to other people who might not get the nuances of you because they don't know you. But I think like Beethoven Octopus, these like all these wonderful little projects that we're really excited about, they were just presented to us, and we just because we were listening, we heard those ideas and we're like, oh my God, that's the one, you know?
Ideas though too, we're making suggestions or comments or ideas about how to have that come about. And because it's such an open working space, everyone else in the room is hearing, and they might have an idea about it, or say like, I want to be involved in that, or even just pick up on the brilliance of whatever's happening. And it might become this spin-off, or they might say like, hey, I want to collaborate with you on this project. And it's a huge piece of how the space works, is being in the same space, and ideas are open and welcome, and you can just kind of put them out in the air. It's like it's not necessarily like focus grouping in one spot and like working to the next. The whole space is kind of just operating like that on a day-to-day basis.
So I have to reflect back. I mean, there's so much just sheer joy and enthusiasm that bounces off you guys about this work. So the decision to leave your job and not pursue medical school, I'm sure you have no regrets, and that you love your work. You don't consider it work. You just come in and this is your place, right? On an intuitive level, you're having an impact. How do you know? And then on a second level, how do you really measure your impact for external stakeholders?
With the help of InnoWeave this year.
That's our plan.
I mean, like you said, on an intuitive level, we know there's a huge impact from the work we do. I mean, the students we're working with are creating, putting projects out there. I mean, it's a productive space. So even if those projects aren't being consumed on a sort of a mass basis, or even if they're not being consumed on a profit basis at this point, it's still a productive space, and people are putting their ideas out there, and I think that's super important.
And they're continuing to come back, and they're telling their friends, and they're giving us testimonials that say, like, this is what I really enjoyed about that. And I think that's our biggest way that people learn about us, is word of mouth. It's just like people talking about it, people taking the projects that they've made here and sharing it with their class or their family, their friends. That's a huge measure of success, that people feel comfortable here.
Because you're talking about productivity and output, but how do you know it's having an impact on someone's life, or the lives of the participants?
I mean, we can see it just by working with these people. We've gotten to know a lot of our core team quite well. So you can just see the pride, and then we get feedback from the families. When someone who had a really difficult time in school is coming in and actually starting to produce on a regular basis, whether it be artwork or videos or audio, just that feedback from the families, feedback from them, tells us that there's a big impact there. And then we also have histories with a lot of the people we work with, so we've seen this progression in them.
Yeah, for sure. Watching them grow up and explore different avenues and decide on a direction or another. I mean, there's also, for example, an individual who wanted to go to school for animation and came to practice that here and worked with us for a while and is now studying animation. There's other students that come back each year and help out with summer camp or just volunteer. And then there's also the pathway where students are creating things here, and I'm thinking about the speech pathologist, for example. It's like getting feedback about that, where people they're feeling like they have the agency to express themselves on camera, and other professionals in the field. It's not a goal that we had, but it's really nice to get that feedback from professionals saying that they're seeing growth based on their involvement with the organization.
Yeah. And then on a stepping further back, measuring impact, I mean, we have our numbers, the amount of people we've worked with, which is significant for the size of our team. Since we've started, it's been probably over 500 youth on the autism spectrum on a year-to-year basis. This past year, we worked with over 100 people, and our retention rates are insanely high, so that's really good. Stepping past that, we've spent a lot of time researching it, and then
we've been hesitant to jump into something where we collect data and spend a lot of time on that and think it's the right move, and that's why we're really wanting to reach out to InnoWeave, to different organizations, or just anybody who's got some feedback about what works well with what we're doing. And so that we want to be transparent and be giving solid numbers or feedback to outside funders, but we want it to be something that makes sense for us and is going to give us extra strengthening capacity within our programming too. So it should be something that reflects back positively and gives a clear picture of what we do, but it should also strengthen our programming. So that's kind of our goal, is how do we find that perfect balance? And it might be a combination of different measures, but we don't know about those yet, in the same way that we didn't know about how to run a nonprofit. We're kind of looking for feedback and trying to get advice from people in the field and people doing similar things.
And learning too that a lot of what we've done so far, we've learned the hard way, in that we're no, we're gonna just do it ourselves, writing bylaws, things like that. And the thing is, there's really good resources out there that can help you do this.
It's true. Part of our process has been to reinvent the wheel, kind of, though, because we've been kind of fiercely independent in like, no, this is an idea that we don't want to just have it mirror every other organization. We have a better idea to make sure that we're going to be giving those opportunities in a different kind of, not in a different way, but in a way that realizes the pathway that we saw, I guess. But we're also hitting this point where we're realizing that we're heading on that trajectory, so we can.
Well, and we've established this organization to the point that we're confident in what it is, and now it's like, okay, now we need to start backing it up, in that, like, we need the business plan to go along with the idea that's already running. We need.
Sure, we've been running for 5 years, and we're going to now do a business plan. It's the perfect time for us, actually, because before it wouldn't have worked. We didn't know how to do a business plan, but I think it would have sidetracked us. We would have spent 6 months doing a business plan, and we wouldn't have done it, I think.
No, at the time we had energy, and that energy went towards the project. And I guess the business plan could be considered part of the project, but at the time, if we did that, then we would not have made enough money to sustain ourselves, and that would have been that.
It appealed to our nature of just jumping in and doing things too. And
Yeah. We're both confident individuals too. Like, we trusted that we could pull this off, and I think that played a big role in it. Yeah.
For sure, and we had a lot of feedback from people engaged in different, either creative industries or in the film community, people who ran their own businesses, and so we were kind of having on-the-fly advice, so that we maybe had a little bit of help. If there was any big red flags, our friends were like, ah.
And then, like, luck has to be brought up as well. Like, there have been more than a handful of times when, like, over the last 5 years, that we were on the brink of that being that, and something happened. Like, just a contract came through for enough money to sustain us for another 5 months. Donation came in, someone who really believed in the organization. Like, there's been more than a few, like, teary phone calls where someone calls and says, well, you know what, like, I want to do this for you guys. Like, okay, so we're not out of a job and this project lives on.
For sure, yeah. So people believing in us has been a huge factor in that. People seeing what we're doing and believing that we have good motives, which we do. We have great motives. But
well, like, the foundations that have supported us did take a risk. Like, our idea was well planned out in our heads, and we wrote decent grants for it. But the first grant that we got, they went out on a limb, and they took a chance on us. And without people doing that, it's impossible for things like this to happen. And now, we have 2 principal funders at the moment, and one of them, for the first time, they saw what we do in Ottawa, and they funded us this past year, and they really didn't know what it was that we were about. They've seen our Facebook posts, and we went to Ottawa with a team of 10 people, and they got to see it firsthand, and, like, they were crying. They were so blown away by what it was that was happening. So it's, us communicating what we're doing is...
It's something that's in development, and it's neat to see that actually happen and see funders get on board and say, like, wow, like, I actually see what it was that we were working towards. And part of it is us developing that idea too, and saying, like, hey, we really appreciate you believing in us, so here's one way to share that. So,
and on that message being, like, resonating really strongly at that presentation in Ottawa, I think we did the presentation with a group of our participants, and the participants were the focus. And I think just that, in, like, bringing the participant to the front, and like, we've done a lot to make this organization happen, but without everybody that's here creating the media and bringing the ideas, then the idea goes nowhere. So, like, having them be the forefront of the organization, I think is really key.
In a 30-minute presentation, we talked for
6 or 7 minutes.
Yeah, and they filled the rest of it. And when they finished talking, standing ovation. And then we filled in some blanks after. We have a few more things to say.
I do want to segue into philanthropy, but I'm going to ask one question to close up sort of this part of the dialogue. How do you feel? Like, how are you feeling about the work that you're doing, and having been the founders of a social initiative that is 5 years in development?
Short answer, really happy. Also sometimes a little bit burnt out, but
yeah, I mean, proud. We did what we wanted to do, and I think, yeah, hopefully that'll inspire other people to take crazy ideas and have a go at it.
And overwhelmingly supported too, just by the participants who come and they believe in the project too, as do their families.
And excited. Like, I mean, right now we're kind of at this pivotal moment. Like, we have a lot of momentum. The project's working really well. We have funding, and we have the ears of a lot of people in Canada that have the potential to really like make this a lot bigger, which is terribly exciting. Like, I think it's a neat idea. I think it's a really good idea, and if we can spread this across Canada, like, one of the side benefits of it is sort of changing the conversation around autism, and that, I mean, it's something we throw around a lot. It's like we want people to think about autism first as a potential creative outlet, or not creative outlet, but like want to think of it first as a positive. I mean, obviously it can be a difficult thing for a lot of people, and we don't want to be like sugarcoating it in that sense, but when you start a conversation around something from a negative every single time, then every idea that gets developed around that particular thing is always going to be in a sort of pitying, non-supportive, it's just coming from the wrong place. So if we can start people thinking about the positive around autism, then there's a lot more projects that can happen like this.
For sure, and it's something that we've seen firsthand when you start to talk about that. Participants know, people know that we're discussing their skills and talents. That's why we keep coming back to that, is we're not first trying to say like, what's your accreditation, what's your, using medical terms or scales. We're trying to approach it from, what do you want to learn about, like, and what do you want to, if you want to learn about audio, great, we're going to give you opportunities in that realm. And from there, I think you can always feed that back to what they're capable of, and instead of always that conversation being, this is the challenge, that's the challenge. And like you said, those challenges are there for sure, but there's got to be a side where we're having a conversation about what's possible too.
The talents that are there, yeah.